Welcome back, webheads, to the next episode of Spidey Swing-Bys as we go through every chronological appearance of Spider-Man by release order. I'm your host, Christian Ashley of Systematic Geekology, as we will be going today into Amazing Spider-Man number 8 in a special tribute to teenagers issue. Will that be a good thing or a bad thing? We shall find out. This, of course, is, like I said, Amazing Spider-Man number 8. This was done in, oh, come on, work for me, Word document. That's not good. Very professional here, as always, on Spidey Swing-Bys. So happy that I can continue being a complete and utter failure as this happens, as I buy time. And there we go. This was released in week 41 in 1963. The release date was October 8th, 1963. The first story is The Terrible Threat of the Living Brain. This, of course, is written by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, penciled by Steve Ditko, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Artie Simek, edited by Stan Lee. Story 2 is Spider-Man Tackles the Torch, written by Stan Lee, penciled by Jack Kirby, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Sam Rosen, edited by Stan Lee. So what else was going on in Marvel this month? Well, some good things, some bad things, but mostly good, I'll say. In Journey into Mystery 99, we see Thor fighting against Mr. Hyde for the first time, completing that Cobra Hyde duo. That's a lot of fun as a villain team up. I really enjoy what they do with the both of them as time goes on, even though Cobra still doesn't really make that much sense as a Thor villain, but I'm willing to slide. Let it happen. Tales to Astonish 51, we see Giant Man and the Wasp re-encounter the Human Top. I believe it's one of their first re-encountered villains. It eventually will become a whirlwind later on in Marvel history. In Fantastic Four 22, the Mole Man returns with Monster Island to face off with the Fantastic Four, seemingly dying, but we know he doesn't because he comes back. Then we have Strange Tales 116 with the Human Torch and Thing being mind controlled by the Puppet Master and fighting one another. And in Tales of Suspense 49, Iron Man fights the Angel of the X-Men when he gets irradiated by an atomic bomb test. It's so stupid. An excuse plot to end all excuse plots. Angel kind of ends up on Tony Stark's property for reasons and ends up irradiated after Iron Man tries to warn him, and that makes him turn evil. That's how Iron Man meets the X-Men. It's true. You just got to look it up. So there's that. So moving into our story proper here, into Amazing Spider-Man number 8, we get to class, where your typical New York classroom, where your students are introduced to a robot that does scientific stuff. So we see the kids in their science class with the teacher, Mr. Warren, going through all this as Flash is like unimpressed is that stupid thing over there, that creepy looking gizmo. And Peter's like, hey, that gizmo happens to be one of the scientific marvels of the age, loudmouth, which of course gets Flash angry because they're bickering between one another, actually smacks Peter and hits his glasses, his spider sense not going off for some reason, to have them break on the floor. And this, of course, gets Peter angry. At this point in time, I can't remember if it's been established that Peter doesn't really need the glasses as much as he used to, or if he doesn't need them at all. And at least at them butting heads, Liz kind of intervenes to try and stop them. But before anything else can go on, his spider sense does go off as his teacher, Mr. Warren, tells them about Mr. Petty of ICM, definitely a play on IBM, more than likely, who has made this robot here that he calls the Living Brain. And it is at this point in time that the students they get a little more excited about it, as he says, like, it's able to do things that no other people are capable of doing, contains more knowledge than any other brain on Earth, human or mechanical. And he asks for Mr. Warren to get a student to assist him. Peter is chosen. Flash gets angry because, of course, he's a professional teacher's pet. And in the process of doing so, they see these two thugs over there. There's typical Ditko thugs in their 30s, 40s, possibly even older, who just look like evil people. And the kids ask, hey, well, if it can know anything, why don't we ask it who Spider-Man's true identity is? And Peter starts freaking out, understandably so. But, like, of course they're concerned about this idea. It's like, because to them, he's been around their area for quite some time. He could even be in their class for all they know. So Peter dutifully punches it in, even though he's worried about what could happen as he, gets the floating head of guilt. That's kind of typical of Spider-Man, where he's worried about what will happen to him, if Aunt May ever will find out, but he does it anyway. And it's written, however, in mathematical code. So that means no one else can interpret it until they do it later. So his identity is safe for now, but Flash is being very brash as normal and wants to do it himself, even though he obviously doesn't have the brain power in order to do so. But it's that point of pride. So the two of them come to blows again. Peter's already messed up because he broke his glasses there earlier, but Mr. Warren intervenes. And in some of the worst advice ever given by a teacher, has noticed that they're always going after one another. So it's time for them to settle their feud once and for all in the gym, not through a basketball game or something like that. No, they're going to box each other. Could you imagine if they wrote this plot line today, or if you heard of a teacher doing this today? They'd get fired before the fight could even start. Like, it's it's insane. It's a great part of the story, don't get me wrong. I rather enjoy what happens here, but it's still hokey and something that definitely wouldn't fly. So Peter's all being laughed at by his fellow students, but he's not gonna last because Flash is obviously, for all they know, Flash is gonna just wallop him and beat him in a fight because that's exactly what you expect from the jock versus the nerd. And Flash is all full of himself, ready to go, and so he's gonna, beat him within the first minute of the fight. And as things go on, Peter recognizes that Flash is moving kind of slow because Peter's Spider-Man and everyone else just moves rather more slowly than him. So what does he do? He socks Flash right in the jaw, completely bashing him outside of the ring, which surprises everyone there and makes him go, "Oh no." He wasn't able to stop himself. He could have easily killed Flash if he wasn't prepared. Um, it could give away his secret identity because how could puny Parker ever beat Flash Thompson in a boxing match? And Flash is giving all these things about, well, it only happened because, XYZ. Well, while that is going on, the two thugs from earlier tried to steal the living brain from Mr. Petty. They beat him up and in the process end up short-circuiting the robot, causing it to go on a rampage. Which is precisely what you want to happen in the midst of all this, of course. So Peter and Flash are continuing to fight each other. Liz can barely even look at it, and Peter is dodging every punch that Flash sends his way. Peter tells him is teach him a lesson he'll never forget. And at this point in time, he is figuring out, okay, how can I hit him in a way that's not going to knock him completely out, but like still let me win this fight? Because he could take a dive right now, but it's that pride, that ego. He's got to be able to beat Flash in this fight. So as the robot, the living brain, is rampaging, everyone else is concerned about it. Flash turns to look. Peter is unable to stop himself from hitting him in the midst of this, and then knocks him flat out. Which, if these students don't know any better, hey, that's a foul. They're right. They call it such. And Flash Thompson is knocked out cold in a little dopey look there. Peter has won the fight, but at what cost? So as the robot is rampaging, living brain doing its thing, Peter picks up Flash, takes him out because, he can't leave him by himself. It is Flash Thompson, but he'll never forgive himself if something happens. And he switches exactly 30 seconds later, not 29, not 31, 30 seconds later, into his costume to try and locate the living brain, confronts it, and it is a little too strong for him at first. It's acting very erratically. He's not able to fight it as well as he would like to. It's kind of him like learning, okay, what am I capable of doing here? What am I not? It's breaks through his webbing at one point in time, and it's even thinking like a human to the point that he's not able to get ahead of it, outmaneuvering Peter. He's trapped for a bit, but then he manages to sleep out of the way to escape it, finds some kids in danger. So he swiftly destroys a lock so that they can get out, which is actually a pretty good low level feat for him. Like he just like destroyed it like it was nothing, and this is like a looks like a steel door. So a great strength feat for early Peter Parker here, Spider Man. Got to appreciate that. And he has lost the living brain who is setting a trap for him. And once again, as he's thinking that's going to happen, the spider sense doesn't go off and he gets knocked down, seemingly beaten by the living brain as it runs away. And oh no, what's this? The two mooks who were trying to steal in the first place go by. Uh, Spider Man sees this happening, confronts the living brain once more, and is able to find a way to take it down using the door that he attacked him with earlier, and swings it around until a point where some of the students are also about to be hit again, and he uses his super strength to stop the living brain from hurting anyone else, diverting its attention away so that it's focusing on him. But he kind of gets grabbed by the living brain and is about to be crushed until he web slings outside of the school, crashing through a window to get away to safety. And in this part, he is able to stop the living brain, readjusting its controls. The two guys who are responsible for all this try and flee. Flash Thompson wakes up. It's like thinking that Peter must have had a brick in his glove when he hit me. And he gets dressed in the process. And as the two mooks kind of go through the door in the locker room that he was in, he unwittingly knocks them out. And everyone thinks that Flash did it. So Peter, thinking pretty cleverly, says, I just realized, Flash, you're the only one who wasn't around while Spider-Man was fighting the living brain. And you knocked those two burly guys out as easy as pie. And you're just about Spider-Man's size. And his other fellow students go, yeah, Puny Parker's kind of right. I never thought of that. And everyone's kind of like, well, maybe it's Flash. Maybe it's Flash. And Flash is obviously like, no, it's definitely not me. But he can't help himself. He likes it. And even though it takes a hit for Peter to realize that people think Flash is Spider-Man and not him, he has managed to beat him up, which is something that he's been wanting to do his entire life. And he's gotten a win. So this issue is split up into two, like I said earlier. This story it's fine. There's nothing offensive in it. There's nothing that I'm like, I just can't watch this. I can't read this. It is what it is. The living brain is a plot device for things to move along. The whole spiel about finding out a secret identity quickly gets dropped. No one really talks about that again. It's just there for drama's sake. This is a 7 out of 10 now, which is a lot better than our next story, which I think I'm rating even less than I did for Strange Tales 115, which, if you remember, I did not rank that well. This, of course, is Spider-Man Tackles the Torch. Oh boy, oh boy. This is a rough one. So, in the process of learning about Johnny and all this, Spider-Man has learned about his relationship with Doris Evans. Doris Evans is, to describe her, she's a shrew. You read Strange Tales, you read about her relationship with Johnny, how she doesn't like superheroes, even though she's dating one. She's a stick in the mud. She's a shrew. She doesn't like Johnny for who he really is. And when they break up eventually, it's one of the greatest things that could have happened for Johnny and her. And she does eventually get some characterization later on, a little growth that makes her far better than she is early on. She's just like, why would you ever make this the main love interest of a hero? Just like nothing fun about her. But apparently she's met Peter's eyes and he's interested in her. So if that's a thing now, apparently. So he decides to go over to where the Torch lives, over in that town, and I can never remember the name of. And they're having a party there, hosted by her. And Johnny is there. They know he's the Human Torch. His identity's been made public and all that mess. And he's got his brand new Stingray, which hey, pretty impressive car. All pure white. It's used no fantastic cars, Johnny says, but it takes me where I'm going, even though he doesn't need a car since he's the Human Torch. So what happens here? Peter, jealous that Johnny is with Doris, and sure, I suppose, decides that he's going to one up him, and intervene in the party where he makes this web bat, and Johnny is able to defeat it with a pillow, which doesn't make sense for how strong Spider-Man's webbing is supposed to be. Now, it looks clever enough. It's a very weird application of his webbing. It kind of also reminds me, and later on when Spider-Man gets to Captain Universe powers, he kind of uses his webbing and like kind of almost uses them as like a Green Lantern ring to some extent. I always thought that was cool, but like at this point in time, like making skis for the Everglades are one thing. Making a bat out of webbing and having it fly forward and then disintegrate easily, yeah, I'm not on board with what they have to say here. And then he's just there at the door. It's like, you know, it's like, "What's up, Johnny?" And everyone else is upset, rightfully so, at what's going on here, and he's just being a huge jerk throughout this whole thing. It's a wildly out of character in much way that I didn't enjoy, Johnny's characterization in 115. So they end up in a little fight. Spider-Man uses his webbing a little more cleverly than the bat, and manages to, get the Torch to be smothered by sand, which I mean makes a little more sense than what should have happened in the Sandman fight. And Johnny kind of goes a little nuclear there for a second, a little nova, attacks Peter, and the two of them swinging back and forth. Spider-Man barely able to get away from the flames, um, and tries to burn him. Like it's just the hot headedness from both of them. It's like for a fight that never should have happened. It's two idiots acting like idiots, which some would argue would mean this is an idiot plot. And the idiocy is furthered over here on our next page, where we see that this has been witnessed by none other than the Fantastic Four themselves, who have been watching for how long? Who knows? Reed, Mr. Fantastic even offers them a hand, and Spider-Man's having none of it because he's tired of the Fantastic Four always acting like they're better than him, which I mean, he might feel that, but acting like this is another thing. It's also amazingly wildly out of character still. He then fights them and actually clowns the four of them for a bit, like making them look like fools, which impressive feats. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy those. I just wish they would have done in a better story to justify why this is happening versus like you and him fight because the story says so in our tribute to teenagers issue at that. So I don't know, if I was a teenager, I wouldn't be really happy about how I'm being portrayed here. But that's that. It's being written by old men. Yeah, it's just one of those things that goes on. So Spider-Man also, once again, a clever usage of his webbing to make a glider. I can't remember if he's done this before, but I do enjoy this. This for Kirby doing that. It's a great job for him to like in the midst of the fight, like improvise, create a new way of using his webbing. And like he's taken on the Fantastic Four, but Sue was able to intervene, stop it, say, "Hey, this nonsense has gone on far enough. Now just stop it." um, I forget how old Sue is supposed to be right now. I want to say she's like early 20s, maybe. Peter is 15, 16. She doesn't know that, obviously. but this is just so funny out of context, especially in light of, like, their later relationship. I've always loved Peter's interactions with the Fantastic Four. Like, the brother rivalry he has with Johnny, like, how much he enjoys hanging out with the Thing, who kinda is a little more chill than everyone else, being, like, Reed's science buddy, the 2 of them can solve problems together, and then, of course, with Sue, the Invisible Woman, Invisible Girl at this point in time in history, there's always been, like, that, older sister, younger brother dynamic she also has with Johnny, obviously being her younger brother in that scenario, but there's also been a slight flirtation between them, but I'm glad that kinda went away with it because the age difference and all that, but it's still funny to me, and that she's doing this it's the only way that placates him in this scenario, and she just tells him, like, straight up, "Hey, you're entirely too clever and adorable to be fighting with us. I'll bet you're as handsome as you are muscular under that mask." And the Thing's just like, "I'll cut it out, Sue, I just ate." And she asked them both to bury the hatchet, and, I mean, to end the conflict, Spider-Man just kinda leaves. And another clever, I'll say, use of his webbing just puts little heart on the sand for Sue, which as time would go on, like early on, this cute little uh, age difference aside, little flirtation between them is fun. But as things go on between his relationship with all members of the Fantastic Four, I love his relationship with Sue and how they interact with each other, how she has become like that older sister he never had, that he could look up to, he can talk to about what's going on in his life. She cares about him, wants to look after him. So this is the start of that, really. And like when we got the first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 1, they didn't really interact too much there, but it's enough. And it's not enough to be a good story, mind you. but for that part of things, it's enough. So that is our tribute to teenagers uh, story. So how did that feel? Well, if you've gotten this far, if I said I'm ranking it worse than Strange Tales 115, which I gave like a 4.5 or a 4 or something, it's lower than that. It's the lowest thing I've rated here. For this second story, first story was once again a 7 out of 10. This second story is going to be a 3 out of 10. I was, man, a little bored, shall we say, with parts of this. The plot doesn't make sense. Like, uh, I don't know if Peter's really had an interest in Doris before this, and he's just doing it for plot convenience. It's all over the place. The fight's okay. It's well drawn. I enjoyed the other FF members being there, but like the reason they're there is kind of stupid. It's like just watching the whole time. It's like, well, it would have been nice if you were established earlier in the story, but they also only had so many pages, so I'll cut them a little slack. But that's what it is. 3 out of 10 for the final story, 7 out of 10 for the first. What do you guys think? As I'm looking forward, I realized that I was going to do a second story here, Avengers 3, with this one. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that up and do it next time with Amazing Spider Man number 9, which technically the next appearance is Avengers 3, then Spider-Man 9. So my apologies on that. I just realized I did that. My bad. But we'll do that next time. Avengers 3, where he has just a little cameo appearance, and Avengers 9, where we meet Electro for the first time. One of the best Spider-Man villains of all time, in my opinion, as far as power sets, as challenges he provides Spider-Man is going to be a lot better than the Vulture, even though I like the Vulture. So there you go. What do you guys think? Is there anything that I could have added to this that you would prefer I speak on? Do you agree with my gradings of the first story and the second story? Is there something that along the way, like I should have said something about this or I didn't talk enough about it? Let me know in the comments below. With that, until next time, webheads, see ya.